All the sports news you need. Live. Good afternoon and welcome to a locker room transfer special with myself, Graham Duffy. So we are going to be on the 22nd of July originally, but we decided that because a lot of teams have done a lot of business this summer, we decided why not have a little transfer window special. So we are live on YouTube, we are live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, and I'm delighted to say that I am joined by my very good friend, Mr. David Smith. David, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well, Graham. Nice to have a wee break, but back in with a vengeance, so looking forward to tonight.
Absolutely, mate. So anyone that's got any questions or any comments, feel free to post them and we'll read them out during the show. We are here until 7 o'clock. So where shall we start? Well, we're going to do this in alphabetical order. So let's start in the Granite City and we'll start with the Dandy Dons and Aberdeen. So we spoke numerous times during the show about the fact last season that Aberdeen had a very, very poor season. The Stephen Glass experiment didn't really work. Jim Goodwin came in and he didn't have a transfer window. And we said that this summer was going to be a massive summer for Jim Goodwin. And so far, he has brought in 6 players. So he's brought in Ilbar Ramdani from MTK Budapest, a defensive midfielder. He's brought in Jayden Richardson from Nottingham Forest, a right back. He's brought in Liam Scales from Celtic on loan, who can play centre back or left back. He's brought in Anthony Stewart from Wycombe, who's also a defender. He's brought in Bojan Majowski, another one from MTK Budapest, who's a striker. And he's brought in a goalkeeper from Derby County called Kelly Roos. So, Dave, starting with Aberdeen, what do you make so far of Jim Goodwin's transfer business?
Yeah, it's a very good transfer business, and obviously Aberdeen played against St Johnstone today, so I don't think pre-season's the type of format to give us a true complexion of how Aberdeen season is going to peter out, in all honesty. But in terms of Jim Goodwin, he's recruited in an astute manner. He's recruited really, really well, and I think there's a lot more to come. It is a big rebuilding job. I don't think 6 is the big number. I think Jim Goodwin will be after more. In terms of, will this be an evolution or revolution? I think it's an evolution for Jim Goodwin because Jim Goodwin will be looking at this and searching for more. But it's not like he's had to revolutionise the whole club. That was probably done February, March time when he was having to get rid of players. He was being proactive. A lot of people at the time thought Jim Goodwin was being a little bit hasty in his approach and ruthless in his approach. But looking at it now, and we've yet to see the true complexities of this, but looking at it now, he's obviously bringing in players to combat this season. I think we'll get a better answer how things are going to progress both Wednesday when Aberdeen play Brecon in a friendly in front of the Red Army, because today would have been more about playing in front of behind closed doors against a fellow Scottish Premiership side in St Johnstone, 1-1 the scoreline, of course. And I think also we'll get a big answer regarding where Aberdeen's going to be at next Sunday when Aberdeen travel to Peterhead in the Premier Sports Cup. Out of those signings, Roos, Richardson, Stewart, Scales, and Majowski started for Aberdeen today. Majowski scored the goal. Really, really good Fisherman went to leave as well. So in terms of that, it's good to see Aberdeen filled in their new signs immediately. And it's a really, really good start transfer-wise for Jim Goodwin.
In terms of one of the lads you mentioned there, Bojan Majowski, he scored 15 goals in 56 games and he's got 10 North Macedonia caps. That, to me, could be a massive coup for Jim Goodwin.
Aberdeen's not been renowned for spending huge money and huge fees on transfers for players, but Aberdeen spent £535,000 to get in Bojan Majowski, and that's a really, really good piece of business from Aberdeen Football Club. Aberdeen, over the last few years, have taken players like Ronald Hernandez and Calum Hendry and all these players for large amounts of money, and if it's not paid off. They also took in, was it Hendry? I forgot who the other striker was. Oh, it was player. It was Scotland 21s, but it's now playing in France. I'll get back to you regarding the name. But Aberdeen have spent money on players over the last few years, in particular during a COVID pandemic, and it's not materialised in the manner Aberdeen wanted it to. Now we're seeing a lot more positive signs regarding Bojan. He scored today. good for momentum that he's getting the goal today. And moving forward, we're just to see the concept in terms of how Goodwin's going to set up the team, but also the way in terms of how these players will develop, because Goodwin's made it clear to the local media who are over in Spain this week that he wants to name a new captain. Joe Lewis isn't surpassed the requirements in that regard. I don't think it's the right terminology to use here, but I think Joe Lewis will get moved on from his captaincy role. In terms of goalkeeper, Roos wouldn't surprise me one bit if he's number one. Obviously, a lot will depend on what happens with Vladke, is it? Vladke?
Yeah.
Simpson's goalkeeper. A lot will depend on what happens with that. But so far, so good as far as Jim Goodwin's concerned. And he said 2.5 or so weeks to go work with the players. It's been all positive so far for Aberdeen, and a lot more positive than it has been in the last few years.
What do you make of Liam Scales? Because obviously, with that Celtic, he didn't really play that much, and now he's gone to Aberdeen. It's another loan. Do you think he could be a potentially good addition for Goodwin?
Well, it's actually funny, Graeme, to be honest, because he played 5 times for Celtic, and the best game he probably had in a Celtic shirt, I was there, and that was against Dundee at Tannadice, where he scored an absolute wonderful goal with 20 minutes to go to pretty much put Nelson in the cake to a fine afternoon's work for Ange Postecoglou that day. Liam Scales is an astute player. He's a player that's got a bit of tenacity about him. He's a player that is direct. He's a player that has a lot of intelligence about his playing. Maybe because of how Celtic were defensively towards the end of the season was maybe the reason why Liam Scales didn't get the game time he pursued at Celtic. I mean, there's no doubt in the credentials he has. Jim Goodwin's made it clear that if Liam Scales performs well, and I'll say it vehemently, if he performs well, Jim Goodwin's looking at the possibility of taking in Scales in January, which would be a really, really good piece of business and a sign that Scales is going in the right manner. I mean, Scottish football is, with all due respect, a step up from Irish football. But Scales has took it in his stride. He had a fantastic game, as I alluded to, at Tannadice back in December. And he's played in the, pointless games isn't the right word. He's played in the games that against lesser opposition, like say Raith Rovers and all them kind of teams. He played against them in the Scottish and the Premier Sports Cup, and he also played in a couple of pointless games for Celtic when the league was wrapped up, basically. So he's shown promise. I think, by all accounts, he played well last Saturday when Aberdeen went up to Bucky and played their friendly there. I think Scales will definitely get game time because of the injury Jack McKenzie picked up in that respective game. No Connor Barron today in that friendly with St Johnstone. That was because he picked up an injury at Bucky. So it's good to have strength and depth as well. So yeah, in terms of Aberdeen and in terms of Liam Scales, a really, really good astute signing there.
In terms of the lads they brought in, like Ramdani, Richardson, Stewart, obviously it's going to take a bit of time for them to settle in and get used to what Jim Goodwin wants to do. I mean, how important do you think it is that these guys hit the ground running for Aberdeen? Because we all know, we said this last season, it was such a poor season for Aberdeen, that really can't happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a lot of people looked at the fact that Aberdeen only beat Bucky Thistle 2-1 on Saturday and looked at it and said, right, for lack of creativity, what's going to happen for Aberdeen this season? Because with all due respect, a lot of people were expecting Aberdeen to beat a high league team and Bucky Thistle fail comfortably, even though Bucky are a good side. I will add that I think Bucky are a League One side on paper, if we're going to look at it, because I think Bucky's got a lot of exciting talent, and I like the guy Max Barry. I thought he was harshly done by with Aberdeen, in all honesty, and I've watched him on numerous occasions. As for Aberdeen, it was good to get off the mark. Matty Kennedy also scored really, really good strike, beat Lee Herbert with ease. Really, really good hit. He doesn't do it enough for me, and it'll be good for him to start getting some more goals. Ramirez scored, which was ultimately the first goal he scored under Goodwin. Funnily enough, he kind of switched off the light when Stephen Glass left the club, so it was good for Christian Ramirez to go and start scoring again, and it'll be good for Bojan to go and start scoring as well. I think the good thing from Ramirez's point of view, Graeme, is I think the fact that he's got Bojan with him it kind of means that he has to be on his game continuously and consistently. Or if not, he's going to be on the bench every week, especially if Goodwin plays a one up front, because he was renowned for playing that 4-2-3-1 formation at Sunderland. That 4-2-3-1 worked an absolute treat for him. So Ramirez will have to be in this game every week. As for Aberdeen, I think they need a big performance at Peterhead next week. Now, Peterhead will probably bring in signings from now until a week on Sunday when they play Aberdeen. But Peterhead just participated in a Elgin City anniversary tournament last weekend, and it didn't go across very well. They needed penalties to beat High League side Everyday Local Works, and they could beat the League 2 side Peterhead, Elgin City, beg your pardon, sorry. And they fielded a lot of trials, who probably won't be there any longer. They have been rumoured into a couple of loan signings. They did try and sign a goalkeeper, but that didn't materialise. But it's going to be interesting to see how things evolve for Aberdeen. The main thing for me for Aberdeen is qualifying from the Premier Sports Cup. It's a really, really good group for Aberdeen. Raith Rovers, the Barton, Stirling and Peterhead. And then after that, go into the league season where they play Celtic. And I think July will be a good barometer to see where Aberdeen's at, because Celtic away is obviously tough, and it's going to be even tougher with Celtic getting the flag and furling. And then the teams they've got in the Premier Sports Cup are all good sides, but all sides Aberdeen are expected to beat.
I mean, you spoke about the Premier Sports Cup there, and I mean, that is going to be massive. But how important do you think it is that Aberdeen get a good cup run, not just in the Premier Sports Cup, but the Scottish Cup as well? Because a club like Aberdeen really should be winning a lot more cups than they do.
I think Aberdeen need to take parallels off of Dundee United, how well they did last season, because Dundee United enjoyed a really, really strong Premier Sports Cup group, and so did Hearts, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And look at where Hearts and Dundee United ended up in their respective positions in the league table, both qualified for European football. And for me, if you're going to do well, you need a good springboard, and that's exactly what the Premier Sports Cup brings. I mean, Dundee United, from their point of view, they obviously got a big disappointment from you beat Pittodrie, but they bounced back very, very well by beating Rangers at home 1-0. Jamie Robson's now at Lincoln City scored a goal in that day in question. So it shows in that regard, but also in the Scottish Cup, Aberdeen fans have been craving for return to Hampden Park and being involved in semi-finals and finals again. And I think if Jim Goodwin was to reach the semi-final, I think that'd be a good stepping stone. Aberdeen fans, of course, expect more. But I think if Aberdeen were to reach the semi-finals at least one cup competition, first and foremost, it gives Aberdeen a really, really good day out, because obviously it's 2.5 3 hours from Aberdeen to Glasgow. But in the same token as well, it'd be good for Aberdeen to finally get back there, just because they've had a disappointing couple of years. Derek McInnes was renowned for taking Aberdeen to cup semi-finals and finals. Maybe didn't get the joy he deserved, and that's what the Achilles heel was between the Red Army and Derek McInnes ultimately. But in the same token as well, I think a lot of people would cherish those moments coming back where Aberdeen are competing in National Cup semi-finals and finals again. And yeah, it was a big moment for Aberdeen, and Aberdeen need to return back to the promised land.
Looking at signings, obviously they've made 6 so far. How many more do you potentially think Jim Goodwin will need going into the season?
I think he'll bring in a goalkeeper. I can see Joe. I'm not seeing many stretch imaginations in a fallout between Joe Lewis and Jim Goodwin. I just have a gut feeling that Joe Lewis will be a squad player at best for Aberdeen this season, or that's the impetus we're getting from the outside looking in. In all honesty, so goalkeeper I think will be a signing. I think a fullback. I'll probably say left, just as cover for Jack McKenzie, because I didn't touch on this. I touched on this for you guys, sorry, but Mason Hancock was scheduled to go out on loan to Brough, and that deal fell at the 11th hour because Jack McKenzie got injured on Saturday in Bucky. So I think a left back will be getting brought in. I'd like to see a midfielder if Ferguson goes, and indeed Conor Barron. So yeah, there's that, and probably to round it off a winger, because we've struggled in terms of creativity, and that was apparently evident in Bucky on Saturday again, where we played Matty Kennedy and Conor McLennan, and they both showed very little in the wide areas. Aberdeen need a Barry Mackay type of player. If they get that, I think Aberdeen could be with a good chance this season of doing very, very well and replicating what Hearts did last season.
In terms of someone that's not at Aberdeen any longer, Calvin Ramsey moved to Liverpool. What did you make of that signing?
Oh, it's a fantastic signing, but also it's a fantastic signing for the youth academy at Aberdeen Football Club because it shows that there's a progression there. I mean, youth football in Scotland, or youth academies in Scotland, get a lot of bad stick for coaching, for way players play games, for structuring the games. It's nothing compared to what it was in the 1980s and 90s. But all when the game's moved on, and Calvin Ramsey is a sign that if you're actually spot on, if you put a lot of hard work into it, you'll get places. And I mean, for Calvin Ramsey to be within the proximities of the Aberdeen first team to then eventually go up to Anfield just shows you how far he's came in the game. And you've got to remember here, he's only 18, 19 years old. And if he does go out and win, fine. But Liverpool are big in terms of marketing and they're big in terms of social media content. Calvin Ramsey's been noted on the social media feeds numerous occasions. And that for me shows that Liverpool have put a lot of faith into Calvin Ramsey, even though he's a young age. And yeah, in terms of Jurgen Klopp, he suits the way Jurgen plays. Is he ready for Liverpool? A lot of people argue, but he probably suits the way Liverpool play, and that's the most important thing for me. He suits the way Liverpool play, and obviously he reminded me of when Andy Robertson came into Anfield, where Andy was mature, but Andy was of that ilk where he needed a good manager and Jurgen Klopp to go develop him on. And it's the same here for Ramsey. I mean, ultimately Aberdeen deserve a lot of praise for developing Calvin Ramsey, and they've done very, very well. The guys at the Youth Academy have done tremendous work, and Aberdeen get a lot of stick locally from boys' clubs and things like that for the way they deal with kids. But they've worked an absolute treat here with Calvin Ramsey. Aberdeen have stepped up their youth development game in the past few years. There's players that maybe haven't made the step up to England, but there's players in there such as your Carla Bassey, your Jack McKenzie's, Ramsey before he left, of course, and Archie Mayer's now sitting in England. There's these players that are coming into the youth academies in Aberdeen and doing well, excelling, and then eventually getting these big moves.
I know that I think for me, Calvin Ramsey will probably play maybe a few of the League Cup games for Liverpool and possibly FA Cup games. I mean, let's be honest, he's not really going to replace Trent Alexander-Arnold. Trent's a brilliant player, but I think he will get game time, but it'll be those cup games. I also know that, Dave Cormack has been very prolific on Twitter recently, and he's been teasing the Aberdeen fans, especially about Conor Ronan. Now, I also know that Hearts are interested in Conor Ronan. Do you think he would potentially be a good signing for Aberdeen if they can get him in?
Well, one thing I'll say about Dave Cormack first and foremost, Graeme, is I'm not a big believer in the way he's approaching the whole thing publicly, because I'm a big believer that you start praising your players and start mentioning players when the deal's over the line. And red scarf in front of Pittodrie, far from the case. And I mean, it looks like it'll be a two-way battle, regarding who will get Conor Ronan. Wolves are demanding a certain amount of money, which is far greater than what the likes of Hearts and Aberdeen can gather. The Hearts and Aberdeen do have sustainable budgets. They have budgets that outweigh your Livingstons and all these kind of teams. But in the same token as well, you do need to be vigilant, because the last thing you want is your Hearts and Aberdeen's signing a marquee player and it goes the other way and they end up being an absolute flop. I mean, Aberdeen have been renowned for bringing in big players. Ronald Hernandez came in for £800,000 and look where that ended up. So yeah, I think Aberdeen need to be vigilant in this one. Of course, if Ronan signs, he's a big player. He's a Jim Goodwin player. He showed that. He showed how he was a top player and managed to get to some dangerous areas. And of course, at Tynecastle scored a fantastic goal in the Scottish Cup. With St Mirren, we beaten that night in question, but scored a fantastic goal at Hearts at Tynecastle. So, in terms of Conor Ronan, he'll get into good areas. He's got a lot of creativity, and he'd be the player Aberdeen would be good for.
Absolutely. So let's leave the Granite City and let's go to Glasgow, and we'll talk about the champion Celtic. So Ange Postecoglou has got 4 signings so far, and I think 2 of them are massive for Celtic. They've managed to keep Jota, the winger. He's signed a new permanent contract. Cameron Carter-Vickers has also signed permanently from Tottenham. They've also brought in Benji Siegrist, a goalkeeper from Dundee United, and they brought in Alexandro Bernabe, who is from Atletico Lanist in Argentina, who's a left back. So I think, Dave, we have to start with Jota. I mean, I think a lot of Celtic fans would be absolutely delighted that they managed to keep him permanently.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Jota's been a big player last season for Celtic. Jota and Kyogo linked up very, very well. And I first got to see Jota at Dens Park when Celtic were in Dundee. He just lit the place alight. James Pake said after the game to somebody, I don't think he didn't speak to us about it, but he spoke to somebody and says, you don't know how to back him. He's unstoppable on occasions, and he was just a top player. And that was the big one for Celtic, because I mean, it was about, the big question was about, could Celtic afford it? Could Celtic offer him what he was looking for? But could Celtic offer what Benfica was looking for? They've ticked all the boxes in that regard. And obviously, Celtic have ticked a massive box with creativity as well. Not only that, though, as you've alluded to, they've not just signed players that were about last season. That Bernabe, they signed from Atletico, is a really good signing. And yeah, Celtic will have a lot more transfer business to do, I think. But I think Celtic will be a bit more vigilant now because they've spent £17 million. Let's not roll the roost here. Ange Postecoglou doesn't sign duds. Ange Postecoglou always does things astutely, and that is a really, really good sign. Jota was ultimately going to spend his summer holidays with family and all that kind of stuff, and it was always going to be a big thing for Jota just going away for a wee while. It wasn't ideal when he was in the same flight as a set of Rangers fans as soon as the season ended, but no, in terms of Jota, he's had a good break, and obviously I'll be back in training next week. So in terms of Jota, really, really good acquisition from Celtic, and he's just exactly what Celtic need. And you do wonder now, is it the beginning of the end for James Forrest? Yes, I've thoroughly acknowledged before we start here that Forrest has signed a new deal at Celtic, but in the same token as well, you do wonder if James Forrest will be a part of the plans, because I mean, Forrest will want to go and play games of football, and he won't be sitting on the bench. But for Celtic and for Jota, really, really good bit of business. And Jota will be needed big time next year. Celtic didn't do well in the European stage. Crashed out in the Europa Conference League and finally Europa League, of course. And afterwards, did very well on the European stage and had to concentrate domestically and won the Premier Sports Cup in the Scottish Premiership. Celtic will have all domestic competitions in the Champions League in the opening part until Christmas time, once we get back up and running again. And in terms of Jota, he'll be a big player, and Celtic will need to look after him continuously, or else it could be interesting to see what happens in that club moving forward.
I mean, if you look at Jota's stats, he's only 23, but last season he had 13 goals, provided 14 assists in 40 appearances. I mean, you're right, he's a very creative player. Whenever he gets the ball, you're wondering which way is he going to go. He can go either way. And I think if you're a Celtic fan, yes, there were a number of players that contributed last season, but Jota in particular was a massive part of why Celtic won the league and the cup last season as well.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, Jota was a player that went under the radar a little bit in the opening exchanges of the season, primarily because Kyogo Furuhashi was putting in goals and delivering the goods for Celtic. But Jota really came on a game about October, November time. That's really when he started to shine to an extent. And after that, he's came in and worked his wonders. He had a really, really good game in the Glasgow derby against Rangers, which Celtic won 3-0. He was fantastic that night. And as I alluded to, he was fantastic against Dundee at Dens Park and Dundee at Tannadice back in December. I thought he was fantastic on that day. And he adds a lot to Ange Postecoglou's side. I do think Ange Postecoglou will bring in 2 or 3 players extra just because of Champions League pursuits more than anything else. But in terms of Celtic, they've got a really, really good piece of business there with Jota, yeah.
as well as somebody else that's also signed that new contract I just mentioned was Cameron Carter-Vickers. He signed a permanent 4-year deal for Tottenham. And again, having such a kind of dominant centre half, Celtic really, really needed that. And I think that's another great bit of business as well from Celtic.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't think Celtic have had a commanding centre half since probably Van Dijk. They've always had players that have shown potential, but never been consistent enough. And the Starfelt gets in a lot of Celtic fans' gums at times, just regards to the way he plays. But when you've got somebody like Carter-Vickers, it makes the other defender that bit better. It always adds a 5 to 10% to that other defender. I think Carter-Vickers offers a perfect balance to the Celtic side, just in terms of the way he defends, the way he commands the game, the way he communicates the game, the way he faces the game. He ticks all the boxes as far as the Celtic defender's concerned. And he's up there with the better Celtic defenders they've had. He just offers he offers a presence, ultimately. And that's a big, big help to the way Celtic want to play. And yeah, in terms of Carter-Vickers, there's a lot more to come from him, I think. And he'll be big for Celtic in terms of the Champions League phase. He'll be getting a lot more flexibility, a lot more promise in the Celtic side than he would have under Spurs. Being honest, he'd probably been the scrap heap under Conte had he still been at Spurs. So Carter-Vickers joining Celtic's a really, really good move, and he's definitely a player to watch out for in the next season. And if he can command and get better, it's always going to be a win-win for Celtic, because I mean, Celtic have recruited in the best manner possible, and they've been proactive, whilst Rangers, we'll get onto them later on in the show, they've very little. They've been linked with a player from Greece. That's really it. It's very quiet down Ibrox way, considering the exploits and the way last season transpired with winning the Scottish Cup and reaching the Europa League final. But for Celtic, they want to get to that level. They want to reach the Europa League final. Absolutely. Are they going to get there? It's a once in a million chance of them getting there. Champions League's their bread and butter. The league's their bread and butter. Once July 30th comes, that's where the attention will start.
This was mentioned on the group chat, I think it was yesterday, by our good friend James Elliott. Are you a little bit surprised that Christopher Julian looks like he's going to be leaving Celtic? I mean, he signed for a lot of money. He's been injured a lot. He's a dominant centre-back. Are you surprised that he's maybe weighed out?
I am in terms of a playing point of view, but I think Celtic have just wanted to balance the books a little bit, because obviously they have brought in good acquisitions such as your Carter-Vickers, your Jotas, your Segas was all playing a free, and they've brought in Barabé as well. They've brought in some really, really good players. And all wins about balancing the books, or else Celtic will end up getting the Rangers stories about administration and all that kind of stuff. Not that will happen for 1 second, but I think it's just Celtic just making sure they're taking care of the books. I mean, Julian is a top defender, but the chances of Julian coming straight back at the Celtic side are very, very limited. Julian will go to Schalke and probably not walk his way, but he'll probably, with a good pre-season under his belt, go straight to the team. And ultimately, he'll get more game time. And if there's an opportunity to come back to Celtic, he'll come back a stronger player.
We've got a question here from Ian Leckenby. Will Rangers dominate this year's league due to the extended winter break, which historically has been Rangers' weaker time of year? What do you reckon?
As I would tell, just a wee well there, Ian. I think Rangers haven't been proactive enough in the transfer market, and as much as Rangers are going from strength to strength under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, and they have shown some great strides, especially in a short period of time. May was strong for Rangers in terms of reaching the Scottish Cup final and being a penalty shootout away from beating Frankfurt. But yeah, in terms of Rangers, I do think they need 4 or 5 year additions. I don't think they need that much. I just think they need 4 or 5 year players. Al McGregor signing was a surprise. Connor Goldson's signing was a surprise. The latter, some Rangers fans thought he didn't look interested, especially after Gerrard left. Obviously, he came out in the press and said what he had to say. Fair enough. McGregor, I thought he might have went into either a squad member or maybe a coaching position. never's been the case. I think John McLaughlin's got a big season in him. I think if John McLaughlin could be consistent and ultimately keep clean sheets, that could be big. But I do think Rangers need 4 or 5 few players. If you were to ask me so far, and I would say so far, I'd say it's Celtic 2 in a row this year.
Yeah, Ian, Rangers won't dominate because Hearts are going to take over world domination. I wish. But just going on back to Celtic, again, you mentioned a while ago, we spoke about this last season, actually, the fact that there was a lot of talk about potentially Benji Siegrist going to Celtic. He has now done. Do you think that's a good signing for Celtic as a backup goalkeeper? Will he want to be a backup goalkeeper?
Oh, 100%, yeah. Well, in terms of if he wants to be a backup goalkeeper, that's a very, very good question because Siegrist has came in and Ben Siegrist has came in and ultimately done well at Dundee United. It was a bit of a surprise when they did decide to join Celtic because Siegrist has been known for being a number one goalkeeper. But ultimately, he's been linked with Rangers as well. And if he joined the other side of Glasgow, there's the big debate whether he's number one there either because we've got Aidan Mcgee and John McLaughlin. But for Siegrist and Celtic, really, really good piece of business. Ultimately, we've got Scott Bain. Barkas was sent out. I'm not surprised for 1 minute that Barkas was sent out because for Celtic it was a bit clear in the books and that's exactly what they've done with Barkas. I think Postecoglou's been good there. I think it means, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward, but it'll probably mean that Scott Bain will be loaned out, even if it's till January, because unless Scott Bain wants to pick up a nice hasty £10,000 a week or whatever he earns, I don't think he'll want to just sit in the stands or sit in the bench every week. So in terms of Scott Bain, but just to see what happens with him moving forward. But for Siegrist, I think it would be good for him to have competition with Joe Hart because at Dundee United towards the tail end of the season, you could tell the transfer talk was affecting him a little bit. He was letting in goals for fun. There was a lot of goals in which could have easily been avoided. He got a fair bit of justifiable criticism from Dundee United fans. And in terms of Siegrist, I think this move will give Celtic and Benji Siegrist a bit of freshness. Ultimately, as well, it pushes Joe Hart on massively. Joe Hart knows he's got a really, really good number 2 goalkeeper behind him. That if Joe Hart doesn't produce good performances or consistent performances, it's going to be the same old Joe Hart story where he's dropped.
Yeah, I mean, I like Benji Siegrist. I think he's a great goalkeeper. And I think he will do a very good job when he's called upon. In terms of the left back, Alexandro Bernabe. Now, I know that our other good friend Reagan isn't a massive fan of Greg Taylor. I think Greg Taylor's a decent defender, but I would imagine that Bernabe probably will be a guaranteed starter.
Yeah, I think in terms of Bernabe and Greg Taylor, before we continue on to Bernabe, I think having both gives Celtic good strength and depth because that's ultimately what you search for, especially nowadays. I think Greg Taylor being in the periphery is good for Celtic because if there ever comes a situation where Celtic pick up an injury in those respective positions, then it'll be good for Celtic to rely on Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor hasn't been his cup of tea, and he certainly isn't Regan's cup of tea. But what Greg Taylor does provide is an impetus to get up the park. He provides a willingness to defend. And also, I would argue, even though, well, no, I was waiting to say he's a better player for Scotland. He hardly plays for Scotland. So, sorry, I'm just thinking of something completely different there. But no, in terms of Greg Taylor, he's a good backup player. But Bernabe, he reminds a lot of people, but is Aguirre, who obviously was at Celtic beforehand, just in terms of the way he plays, his tenacity of getting the ball, his ability to get up the park, his ability to score goals. He's got a bit of a wee nailer / he's Aguirre about him. And he'll be a big player for Postecoglou this season. And as I touched upon, Postecoglou does recruitment the right way. A lot of people could take a lot of inspiration from the way Postecoglou recruits players, and it's a really another good piece of business from Celtic.
William Forbes says, I generally think Van Bronckhorst will win the league with Rangers this season. William, I've just said, mate, Hearts winning the league this season. Put your money on it. Actually, but maybe don't. So, in terms of Celtic, how many more signings do you think Postecoglou will make?
In terms of make, I think he's got one or two more in him, and I think that would be the right for Celtic because if Celtic bring in 2, 3, 4 players, I think that would be good in terms of strength and depth, especially for Champions League because having the European football alongside domestic football means you need strength and depth. You've seen it a lot that Celtic will play 40, 50 games a season, where squads are designed in order to play 40, 50 games a season. It's not like they're going to stick with the same team for 35, 40 games. There'll always be a 4 or 5 changes here and there. So yeah, I think Celtic need 2 or 3 more good players. But ultimately, I don't think Ange Postecoglou will bring in players to sit on the bench or be squad players either. I do think Postecoglou will bring in players to challenge, to get into the team. He'll be a big believer in bringing in players that are better than what he's got at present, and that would mean a lot because Celtic are at a really, really good level just now.
Yeah, so let's leave Glasgow and let's go to Dundee, and a club who hasn't made a signing yet, but that's probably due to the fact they've only just got a new manager. Dundee United. So Jack Ross has been appointed United manager after the surprise kind of departure of Thomas Coates, who did so well last season. Firstly, before we get to Jack Ross, what does he make of Thomas Coates leaving to go to Hungary?
Yeah, I read an article on the Courier because he spoke to the Scottish journalist somewhere to leave on Tuesday, and I was very intrigued with how the article went because it seemed to be that Tom Coates was on holiday in Turkey, and basically the calls started coming in from Rijeka initially. Blackpool were interested, and then obviously Rijeka and Blackpool didn't materialise. So in terms of that, once the door was open for Honvéd Budapest, it was an opportunity. And don't like Tom Coates has worked with Chris Doherty, who's the who's the sporting director at Honvéd Budapest. And in terms of that, it's obviously a good move for both Tom Coates and indeed for Budapest. As for Jack Ross, I think it's a astute appointment from Dundee United. I think he got a rough treatment at Hibs before the Premier Sports Cup final last season against Rangers. No, against Celtic. Against Celtic, the Premier Sports Cup. Sorry. So in terms of Jack Ross, he's shown continuously that he can provide European football to his sides. He can provide semi-finals and finals to his sides. That's what Dundee United will be craving now. Dundee United are craving silverware. They had a really, really good period a decade ago. Dundee United are wanting to replicate the heights of what they achieved a decade ago. Dundee United had a period in the Championship. Dundee United came back stronger. Tony Arscore's done a wonderful job. He's obviously helped develop players and managers and film members and staff. And Jack Ross is a big part of that. And Jack Ross has already got a good youth signing, but he's not a youth signing, and it's in Ian Harkes. Ian Harkes had interest in Morecambe, but he's persuaded Ian Harkes to sign on at Tannadice. That's a really, really good piece of business for Dundee United, as far as I'm concerned, because Ian Harkes offered a lot to Dundee United last season. And I think another piece of the jigsaw would be Dylan Levitt coming in. If they can get Levitt coming in, that's absolutely brilliant. Goalkeeper is where they need to strengthen Dundee United. Xander Clark has been linked with United. He's back in the country now. After having his honeymoon. But in terms of Xander Clark, he would offer so much stability to Dundee United, so much security to the Dundee United backline, and he would be brilliant for a player like Jack Ross. So there's a lot more to come. And Ian Harkes is a really, really good start. Ian Harkes scored in a lot of big games for Dundee United last season, including the Dundee Derby, scored at Celtic Park against Celtic, and he also scored against Ross County, what was a big game for Dundee United as well. So in terms of Ian Harkes, that's a tremendous piece of business for Dundee United.
Do you think Jack Ross can continue the good work that Thomas Coates did? Because obviously 4th place last season, Jack Ross has come in now. Do you think that's a good fit for them?
Yeah, I think so. They're both similar in terms of the way they play, and that's a big thing for me. It's not Jack Ross will have to come in and change much. Jack Ross ultimately have an idea who he wants to go and sign. Dundee United have been rumoured with some big signs, including a few from ex-Hibs, such as Alex Gogic and Christian Deutsch, and they've also been linked with Jamie McGrath, who was at St Mirren as well. So in terms of Dundee United, they're now being active in the transfer market, and they obviously want to add towards the squad. And Dundee United fans have been feeling left very frustrated, but ultimately for United, if they can get 5 or 6 players out, there's a lot of positivity about that club right now, and that will only grow prior to Europa Conference League and the start of the league season if they can get players in. Dundee United have started later than usual, but I think that's because of their European exploits. Dundee United have their first pre-season game 2 weeks tomorrow at home to Sunderland at Tannadice, and I'm led to believe they're going away to Spain next weekend as well. So interesting times at Tannadice, and they'll be looking ahead rather than looking backwards.
William Forbes comes back in and says, how long before Jack Ross buys someone from St Mirren? It's a fair point. Is there anyone at St Mirren that you could potentially look at?
Well, I think you'll look at players at St Mirren. McGrath's obviously been going across to Tannadice, but he's obviously interested in signing Gogic and Christian Deutsch as well. Christian Deutsch was offered so much to Dundee United side because what was evident last season at Dundee United was when the forward areas, Tony Watt was good as a number. He was better in the forward areas, but he was ultimately getting put into the wide areas. Nicky Clark's better as a number 10. And Christian Deutsch would offer so much to that United side in terms of the way he plays. I think United are sorted defensively because you've Ross Graham, you've Ryan Edwards, you've Charlie Mulgrew, and you've got William Smith or Kieran Freeman as well. So they're sorted defensively, which is a big pull. But in terms of Dundee United, they could do with extra players in the forward-thinking areas. What I did find was if they didn't have Dylan Levitt, they were getting exposed in the midfield area. So Dundee United do need a midfielder, but Jack Ross doesn't need to change too much. And that's a big positive for Jack. It means that he can work with it within his means, but he can obviously get in players that are going to help Dundee United progress even further.
So exciting times for Dundee United, but not quite as exciting, and that's a shameless segue to my beloved Jambo Gorgie, who are going to win the title next season. Woohoo! So Robbie Neilson has so far brought in 5 new players. We have completed the permanent transfer of Alec Cochrane, the left back. We've also signed Alan Forrest from Livingston. We've signed Kai Rolls from Central Coast Manors in Australia, who's a centre back. We brought in Lewis Nielsen from Dundee United, who's a right back, and we've also signed George Grant, an attacking midfielder from Peterborough. So, Robbie Nielsen's signing so far, what have you made of them?
Yeah, very good again. Alan Forrest, fairly impressive player at Livingston. He also did well at United, so good start bringing in Alan Forrest, of course. Kyle, is it Rowles?
Kyle Rowles, yeah.
Kyle Rowles. Kyle Rowles is a good sign as well. He's a player that not a lot of people in Scotland know a lot about, in all honesty, but Robbie Nelson's been renowned for going to the Australian market and bringing in quality players, and that was proved positive for bringing in. He was the midfielder, last Australian midfielder. He was Australian. I've forgotten the story. The player that played for Hearts last season. No, not Ben Ingham.
We had Cammy Devlin.
Devlin, that's the one. Sorry, Devlin. Showing with Cammy Devlin last season how they can use the Australian market very, very, very well. Where Cammy Devlin's coming in, making an impetus on the game, making a positivity, producing a lot of stamina and adrenaline in the game, and that was important for Hearts. And Rowles is another good sign. They've also brought in another few good players, and I think there's a lot more to come. I don't know what you think about the forward areas, Graeme, but I think Lawrence Shanklin, I don't think it'll end up coming to anything, but I think if Lawrence Shanklin does sign for Hearts, I think it'd be a good bit of business. Robbie Nielsen seemed tied a bit, in all honesty, because according to Game Spears, he looked fairly tied on the Shanklin, but in terms of Shanklin, he would offer so much to his Hearts side, but also Ellis Sims, if Ellis Sims is his sign next year.
He's the one I want, but it's up to Everton. Everton haven't decided what they're going to do with him yet. I don't think he'll stay at Everton, although they have just sold Richarlison to Tottenham, but I still don't think Sims is going to play. So if we can get him back, brilliant. I would love that.
Yeah, the priority for Hearts, in my honest opinion, is a striker and a defender. If this is where Shankland ticks all the boxes as far as I'm concerned. He showed it Dundee United under Robbie and indeed under Mickey Mellon, even though the relationship deteriorated under Mickey Mellon, how he could go and score goals, and different kinds of goals as well, 50-yard strikes, 10-yard in the box, volleys across the goal. You can score all kinds of goals. And if Conor Ronan signs, I think in terms of the midfield area, probably Hearts would just need one striker, because the midfield area for Hearts would be fairly strong. I mean, you would have Ronan, Mackay, Beningame.
Yep.
Yeah, Beningame. You'd have Devlin. You'd have Rowles. You'd also have Alan Forrest that I haven't mentioned. And that's 6 players I've mentioned there. So midfield-wise, fairly strong. Centre half, I think, has to be a priority. Somebody alongside Peter Harron would be strong. It'd be interesting to see where Hearts go for that defender. Craig Orr's obviously going to be number 1. There's no doubt in that. Kingsley will play left back and right back. Who's your right back at the moment, Graeme?
Nathaniel Atkinson, but we've also got Michael Smith that can play there.
Well, you've got Smith and Atkinson, 2 quality players. For me, Hearts just need a striker, and I think Hearts would be done in terms of a solid foundation in terms of the opening 11, but also the most important thing to Robbie Neilson as well is getting strength and depth, because I've not even mentioned somebody you love to hate, and that's Andy Halliday, and he's still on the periphery of the Hearts squad, which tells you how strong this Hearts squad is right now.
Yeah, I mean, Robbie did say yesterday after a friendly win that he is still looking to strengthen pretty much every area, which is good to hear. And I do agree. I think we need at least 2 strikers for me. If we can get that, I'll be delighted, because Liam Boyce is pretty much all we've got. Although I know Ewan Henderson's back, I don't think he'll play a lot of games. He might get put, but I'm more than happy with what we've done so far. And I think the one player I'm looking forward to seeing actually is Alan Forrest. I think he's a very good player. I know I've seen a lot of folks say he's better than James Forrest. I don't know if that's quite true yet, but I do like the look of him. He scored a couple yesterday on his debut. I know it was only against the Gibraltar team, but I'm pleased with what I've done so far. But if we can just get a few more signings in, and as I say, Ellis Sims for me would be absolutely perfect if we can get him back.
Yeah, 100%. I just think you need a striker in order to complete the bill. But I think in terms of strength and depth as well, Graeme, I think you need 2 or 3 strikers. I don't think settling for a Shankland or a Sims would just be enough, because Liam Boyce has been attracting interest from likes of Aberdeen and other clubs recently, and that's all fine and well. But if Liam Boyce goes, that's a huge gap to fill. It's all fine and well having 10 players throughout the rest of the park that are going to deliver quality. For me, it's about adding firepower up front as well. Hearts have been renowned for good strikers over the years, but if Boyce doesn't stay at the club, then Hearts will need to look elsewhere as far as I'm concerned. And Shankland and Sims could be the correct answers in that department. But in terms of Robbie Neilson, I think he did the majority of his business last season, which was a huge positive, because it means he doesn't have to do as much this season.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm looking forward to getting Beningame back. I think he's probably going to be out for at least a couple of months of the next season. He's still injured. But I wanted to ask you actually, because I've seen a lot of Hearts fans, and I mentioned this last season as well to somebody, but there's still quite a lot of Hearts fans that don't really rate Liam Boyce. Now, I think Boyce is a great striker. I mean, yes, he misses chances, but his all-round game is brilliant. As a neutral, what's your take on Liam Boyce?
Well, you've got to remember, and you'll understand this, he picked up a big injury, if I'm not mistaken. And it wasn't crucial, or didn't have repercussions to Hearts this season, because Hearts were ultimately comfortable anyway. But Liam Boyce, when he returned back, came back and scored goals again. Maybe didn't score the amount of goals in the second half of the season that he did in the first half of the season. If I read correctly, he scored 18 goals in the calendar year of 2021. Yeah, he scored 19 goals in the calendar year 2021, which was some going. And then he picked up that injury, and it wasn't ideal from Boyce's point of view. He came back in, And I remember watching him at Tardis. He was really, really good that day. He got into some really strong areas, got the opening goal, a tremendous strike into the bottom, kind of curtailed off the right-hand post and into the net. And it was a fantastic goal from Boyce. And he offers so much intelligence to the way Hearts play. He offers a goal threat. He offers an instinct in front of goal. He's not even a lazy player either. I think Hearts have players that can give Boyce that opportunity to be lazy to an extent. His movement's really, really good, and I agree with what William Forbes is saying here. He had 2 great chances to bury Hibs, but if you ask any Hearts fan right now, and including Graeme, about those 2 missed chances, they won't bat an eyelid. Ultimately, for Hearts that day in question was about getting the job done. That's exactly what they did. Wayne Boyce was such a massive player for Hearts last season. If they can keep him going this season, that will be big for Hearts.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those chances. He should have scored, but as you say, for me, it was all about winning that game, and that was all that mattered. So let's look at the team that they actually played in that game. That was a great segue there. And Hibernian. Now, before we get on to the fact that they have signed 8 new players, let's first talk about the fact that they appointed Lee Johnson as new manager on 19th of May. So what did you make of that appointment? Was that the right appointment, do you think, for Hibs?
Yeah, I think it is the right appointment. He did get his critics, but every manager gets his critics in the game. For Johnson, he showed a lot of a battle with Sunderland and Bristol City where things got tough at both of those clubs, either due to financial, due to results, or due to various things with the fan base. Because Sunderland and Bristol City are 2 demanding fan bases, and Hibs is a third one. Hibs have a very demanding fan base of it. And yeah, in terms of Hibs, in terms of Lee Johnson, he's taken 8 good players so far. I think he's got room for more, 100%. I think he does. It's about finding the right players for the right areas. And in terms of Lee Johnson, he's had 2 really good victories this week in friendlies. Friendlies doesn't exactly friendlies gives you a good barometer for the season ahead. But I don't think friendlies is the be all and end all for the season. He's beaten Hartlepool, who will go great guns under Paul Hartley and Gordon Young this season. That's a terrific appointment from Hartlepool, bringing in Hartley and Youngie. And then they beat Barton Albion. Barton Albion's no flukes, and Barton's a good side under Jamie Floyd Hasselbank. Hibs are looking for a centre half ultimately though. Ryan Porteous, he's not everybody's cup of tea. Last season, I think the management changes and various things that were going on at that club had an effect on on Ryan Porteous. Under Jack Ross, there wasn't a maturity. There was we'll give you 100% to Jack Ross. Under Maloney, it seemed like things were all over the place. Porteous put in a shocking challenge at Bitodra, which I remember very much. And I think Hibs need a centre half to help what they've got. Bashiri's not everybody's cup of tea, and he's signing this season, Rocky Bashiri.
Yes, he has. He signed a new permanent deal.
So he did, permanent deal. So he did. That just tells you how much homework I've been doing today. But there you go. In terms of Bashiri, I think Hibs bringing in a centre half to help Rocky Bashiri would probably make Hibs more stabilised defensively. What this is mean for Ryan Porteous, because if Porteous was to somehow come back at the team, it might leave him in an absolute guilt. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But at the same time, it can leave him feeling hungry. So I think Hibs bringing us into half would mean the Porteous would be hungry, be ready to come straight back into the Hibs side and create his own impetus upon the game. Now, in terms of Hibs, we'll just see what happens. And I don't think we'll get an absolute answer until near the start of the season, because Hibs have still got a few more friendlies to come. They play Morton, I think, coming up. And then they play Bonnyrig Rose, which at Dundas Park, when you play these kind of games, it's not about football, ultimately. It's not about style football. If you need the wins, it's about getting wins. When they play Morton, it's in the Premier Sports Cup. That is not in the league. Not in the friendly, sorry. Bonnyrigg's going to be a bit big because Bonnyrig will get to put their own statement in the game. The games at Dundas Park, it's on Premier Sports. Bonnie have just came up in the SPFL, so it's going to be an interesting one for Hibs. That'll give us a good barometer to see where Hibs are at. Hibs will be expected to go delivering a professional performance that day. If not, they're going to get a lot of critics. As for Lee Johnson, he's brought in some really, really strong players. I do think he needs that a striker as well. Strikers are hard to come by, understandably, but he's lost Scott Allen, he's lost Dan Mackay, and he's lost, I forgot who else he's lost, but it came up in an article last night. No, he's not lost Dan Mackay, but Dan Mackay will be getting loaned out to a Championship side, Johnson revealed yesterday, which I think is interesting. I think it was Dylan Tate as well, Dylan Tate I think is getting loaned out as well. And Dylan Tate's a player that's shown promise, but hasn't done enough in the Hibs jersey. Same with Dan Mackay. Dan Mackay enjoyed a good spell at Kilmarnock last season, but ultimately needs to be in the Championship and creating his own statements. And it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Milkerson, I've just read through volume here, was on the score sheet today, and I haven't really paid much attention to Hibs and their transfer deals in all honesty, but Julian and Milkerson in the score sheet, and that's fairly positive for Hibs. And Julian's came in and made a good impression in pre-season already, so it's going to be an interesting one for Hibs.
Yeah, the signings that they made so far, they've got Noah Kennedy from Leeds, who's a centre-back, can also play centre defence midfield. They've brought in David Marshall, the goalkeeper from QPR, who we all know very well. They brought in Momadou Bojana from Rainbow FC on loan, who's a centre-forward. They brought in Rocky Bashiri, as I just mentioned, who's a centre-back. They brought in Lewis Miller from MacArthur FC, who's a right-back. They brought in Jair Tavares from Benfica, who's a centre-forward. They brought in, I will touch on this man in a minute, they brought in Aidan Mcgee from Sunderland, midfielder obviously, who's 36. And they brought in Eli Yuan from St Gallen on loan, who's another centre-forward. So they have managed to get a few forwards in. And from what I saw today, from what I see on Twitter and stuff, is that Hibs seem to have a lot of pace in their team now. One player I do want to touch on, I mentioned him a minute ago, Aidan Mcgee. Now, are you surprised? Obviously, Lee Johnson knows Mcgee. Are you surprised that he's managed to get him back to Scotland at all?
I am to an extent, because I read a thing that Mcgee wasn't happy with how he was getting criticised primarily for getting called up to Ireland national team when he was obviously of Scottish birth. So I'm surprised in that regard. But Mcgee must have a relationship of some magnitude with Lee Johnson prior to signing, or else I don't think that move would have materialised in the way it has. So in terms of Aidan Mcgee, he brings experience, he brings energy. Despite the tender age of 36, he brings a lot of rawness to the game, a lot of intelligence to the game, and it won't be the Aidan Mcgee of 10 years ago, let's put that mildly here, but it'll be an Aidan Mcgee in which he can get forward, he can add pace, he can add opportunities, and also he can offer a lot of experience. You'll remember Charlie Mulgrew to an extent, where he's went to a certain club to maybe a stepping stone towards his coaching badges. This will be a big move for Mcgee. He'll offer experience. Of course, I think Hibs still have a lot more to do in terms of the forward areas as well. Kevin Nisbet and McGuinness is still to come back. And when they come back, I think there'll be new signings as well. So in terms of Hibs, Juwan's a really, really good signing. Mcgee obviously offers that experience and composure in the game. And it's going to be interesting to see what Hibs do in the coming weeks and months.
I mean, from what I saw on Twitter earlier, I know it's only a friendly, but from what I saw, they played with a really high tempo, a lot of pace. Now, obviously, Lee Johnson's going to have his own philosophy to try and instill that pressing game into Hibs next season. I mean, surely, I said this last season, Aberdeen and Hibs cannot have worse seasons than they did last season. So you've got to imagine that Hibs are going to be a lot better this season.
Yeah, for Hibs, it was a major high reaching the Europa League, and then a complete opposite reaching the bottom six. It just goes to show where Hibs were at. And it showed that 4 or 5 defeats can knock you as a football club, because Hibs had a torrential period. They had a few torrential periods actually. First and foremost in October, they had another torrential period about March, April time, where things just weren't great. And William agrees with me. It's good for Mcgee to have a bit of composure, and it's good that he has that bit of composure. He's not going to be the player he was 10 years ago, but he's going to be a player that will offer so much to his Hibs side. And for me, that's exactly what Hibs need, a bit of creativity, something that Aberdeen don't have at this precise moment in time. For Hibs, they obviously don't want the season of last season, but this is what makes the Scottish Premiership so intriguing this season, because you'll have Aberdeen that will be resurgent, ready to go. You'll have Dundee have been fairly quiet, but you've got Ross County who will get on, who have been busy. You'll have Celtic who have been busy. Rangers will be there and thereabouts. They're the top two in Scottish football for a precise reason. Hearts have been busy so far. It's going to be an interesting one, and there's going to be one very, very good side that will not make the top six this season. And once they not right off St Johnstone, they've been quiet in the transfer market. They had a horrible season last season, but St Johnstone, they can always create a shock under Davidson, and it's going to be an interesting league this year.
You talk about the experience that Aidan Mcgee's got, but if you're a centre back at Hibs or a left back or a right back, and you're seeing David Marshall behind you, how much confidence will that give you?
Oh, massive. David Marshall played a massive part in Mark Warburton's Queen's Park Rangers side last season, just in terms of his experience, his ability to read the game, his ability to command the team basically, but command defensively as well. And I'm a big believer that if you've got a good goalkeeper and a good backline, it allows your midfield and your forward players to evolve and be strong in those areas. And I think that's the hope from Wade Johnson. Wade Johnson's been known for being astute and diligent defensively, and he's also been known to have been fairly organised defensively as well. And that's a big thing for Hibs this season. Hearts get a lot of impetus in the forward areas from Craig Gordon doing well for them. You think the same thing will happen with David Marshall doing well with Hibs. If Marshall can go and be experienced, be composed, deliver some top saves, then Hibs will be in a really, really strong position. Let's not forget here, I'm going to do parallels to Hearts. Hearts were third, but they were known in stages for the style of football they played. And there was times where Hearts fans were like, happy we won the game, but we're bored of the way you're playing, Robbie. But ultimately, third place was what was desired. You get the feeling the same thing will happen in Leaf as well, where Hibs will play some games not efficiently or playing the tiki-taka football style, but they'll get results, and that'll be the most important thing for Lee Johnson's side.
And at least if David Marshall comes off his line, he won't have Patrick Schick to play against him in the Premier League.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, we mentioned it with Aberdeen and they need a good start to the season. How important do you think it'll be for Lee Johnson and the Hibs to get off to a good start?
Oh, massively. I mean, Aberdeen and Hibs especially are two clubs that if you don't start well, you're going to be under pressure. Hibs have been a club known for when things don't start well, such as it's been found out when they've hired like the Heckingbottoms, Jack Ross last season, other managers, that if things don't go well, ultimately they're out within a cast. Lennon had a torrential period towards the end of his tenure at Hibs, and that ultimately cost him his tenure at Easter Road, despite it being in spells a largely successful one. So Lee Johnson needs to get off to a good start. If Lee Johnson wins 6 out of 10 games, I think it's a really, really good start for Hibs. If Lee Johnson was to win 3 out of 10 games, he's under pressure for that second quarter of the season, because Hibs fans will not be looking at game 22 to 24 hoping Hibs are in 9th or 10th. A lot of people will look at that and say Johnson out, Johnson out, Johnson out. So Hibs and Johnson need to get off to a really, really strong start. It's the same for Aberdeen. Aberdeen will be looking for European football. I mean, Hibs haven't been as renowned for European football exploits as Aberdeen have, especially in recent times. But what you do get from Hibs as well is they've obviously stepped things up as a football club. They're going down a different approach, an approach that might not be ideal to many, but they do go down an approach that ultimately delivers European football, or did under Jack Ross. So this will be an interesting campaign for Hibs.
Yeah, we're into the second hour of the show. It's been a busy first hour of the show. We've still got a lot more to do in the second hour. Any more questions or comments, keep them coming in. It's been great to read the comments coming in. So let's move on now to newly promoted Kilmarnock under Derek McInnes, and they have brought in 4 new players so far. They brought in Alan Power from St Mirren, a midfielder, Kerr McInroy from Celtic, another midfielder, Zach Hemming from Middlesbrough, a goalkeeper, and Lewis Mayo, a centre-back from Rangers on loan. What are you making of Derek McInnes' transfer so far?
Yeah, I think it's a good sign of bringing in Lewis Mayo, first and foremost. I think that's the highlight for me. The 3 players they've brought in Kerr McInroy. I don't know much about Kerr McInroy, in all honesty. They've brought in Zach Hemming, and they've also brought in Alan Power, of course, sorry. Alan Power works like a horse. He's got a machine about him. What a lot of Killie fans were critical about was how he performed under Tommy Knight. But I think there's a difference in strategy from Tommy Knight to Derek McInnes, and that's going to be interesting to see how that evolves and develops. Yeah, good goalkeeper bringing in with Hemming. Hemming was showing a lot of credentials last season. For me, I think Kilmarnock need to do a lot more though. Kilmarnock won the league last season comfortably in the end, despite the exploits and the surprises they both try to bring onto them. But you do wonder if the Championship was under par to an extent last season. In my honest opinion, I think Derek McInnes still needs 3 or 4 signings. They obviously got a really good victory today against Charlton. But in terms of the players they've brought in, Kerr's a good signing, Zach's a good signing, Alan Power's a good signing. Alan Power will bring a lot of solidarity to the Kilmarnock midfield that maybe was missing last season. Kilmarnock were getting cut adrift massively in stages last season, and that was a problem. So I think McInnes has done well bringing in him. For me, I think McInnes will take advantage of the loan market again. When McInnes was brought into Rugby Park, he took advantage of the loan market, bringing in Dean Campbell, Dan Mackay, and he also brought in, I forgot who else he brought in. Lafferty came in January, although that was permanently. Lafferty will be a big player for Kilmarnock this season. Lafferty's been known for scoring goals in Scottish football. He's a captain in Scottish football circles. He's going to be a big player for Kilmarnock this season. And in terms of the way Kilmarnock play and the surface the player, he'll be ideal for the way Kilmarnock play. And he's going to be a big player. So, yeah, there's a lot of positivity about Kilmarnock just now. But Derek McInnes has been renowned for bringing in a specific style of player. But he's also been renowned for bringing in players that will give him hard work. And that's exactly what he's got at his disposal so far.
Not just McInnes because of experience at Aberdeen and obviously experience in the Premier League, but how important do you think Kyle Lafferty will be to Kilmarnock next season?
Oh, massively. As I said, the way, especially home soil, the way Kilmarnock play in the surface will suit Lafferty, because McInnes spoke to Open Goal. Open Goal is not my cup of tea, just to clarify, but he spoke to the Open Goal as like, see, like Wednesday and Thursday in training. Lafferty won't look hungry, he won't look like the player that's ready to play on a Saturday. But by a Saturday, if you manage him correctly, he'll be hungry. He'll be like a lion for you. And that's a big thing for me. I mean, Kilmarnock have been renowned, or Derek McInnes has been renowned for playing 5 midfield with 1 up front, and that 1 up front will get into dangerous areas and score goals. Lafferty's going to play a big part. Lafferty played against Arbroath at Rugby Park. He also played against Calais in the latter stage of the season, and you could tell there was a desire from Lafferty to get back to the Scottish Premiership, but ultimately do well for Kilmarnock Football Club. I think relegation hurt a lot of people within that club. It was a tough period for Killie. They're back in the spotlight. They're back in the top flight, and Kyle Lafferty will play some part in that. And Lafferty will help in terms of not just his aerial presence, but also his ability to just be instinct in the box as well.
I think I'm right in saying that Chris Burke is also still at Kilmarnock, so again, that's another bit of experience they've got as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's similar to McGee. He offers experience. He's maybe going on a bit in terms of age, but he offers a lot in terms of getting into the final third and offering chances and creating exposure for opponents. So in terms of Buck, he's a good player to have. And Kilmarnock are really getting stronger. But for me, I still think Kilmarnock need 3 or 4 players to complete the jigsaw.
Do you think it's going to be particularly up front? Because as you say, they've only really got Kyle Lafferty. Do you think they'll need a bit more options up top to help Lafferty out?
Yeah, I think they need another striker, defensively as well, perhaps, and probably an extra midfielder.
How do you think Kilmarnock will do next season? Do you think they'll be, would they potentially have a chance of finishing top 6, or would it be a bit out their reach?
Well, you never know, because Derek McGee has been renowned over the last decade for doing well, having a consistent Aberdeen side suppressing them in the top 6, and it's on paper, it's not been the strongest Aberdeen sides either. It's been Aberdeen sides where they've had strong players, but maybe had players that were just given an extra 10% because of the demands of Derek McGee. I think this will be the same with Kilmarnock. Derek McGee is such a chill manager. He approaches things in a unique manner where he's not exactly hands-on with players. He's got a good affinity with players. I think that was shown. One player I think will have a big part to play this season for Kilmarnock, but he wasn't a new acquisition, was Ash Taylor. I think Ash Taylor is ultimately Derek McGee's best pal when it comes to football, and Ash Taylor will play a big part for Kilmarnock. The way he played against Arbroath, he's not even his cup of tea, but I thought Ash Taylor was tremendous in that night in question against Arbroath when they won the league. Just his ability to score the goal that he did. Blair Alston's a big player for Kilmarnock as well. His ability to get in behind defences, score goals, and he'll be a big player that offers a lot of composure and professionalism to Kilmarnock Football Club. So Kilmarnock are going well, but they do need a bit more. And because I was speaking to friends after they beat Arbroath, and we were like, congratulations to Kilmarnock for getting the job done. But in terms of Kilmarnock, they do need 6, 7, 8 players, because are the players brought in going to be sustainable? Time will tell in that regard. And Kilmarnock need a bit more, and need a bit more quality, I think, especially in the forward areas. Probably an extra midfielder and probably an extra defender as well.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Let's move on to Livingston. David Martindale has brought in 3 players so far. So they've got Philippe Canchar from Western Sydney Wanderers, who's a centre-back. They brought in Ismail Gonçalves, who's a centre-forward, we all know from his time at Hearts and many other clubs. And they've also brought in Scott Bitsindai from Lierre, who's a centre midfielder. So what are you making of David Martindale's signings so far?
Yeah, David Martindale always seems to go left field with his signings, don't he? It's always players that nobody knows a lot about. David Martindale's often renowned for bringing in players from this part of the country that are maybe lower league superstars, but he obviously goes abroad for his players as well, and he's really good at doing that. But Martindale always recruits in an astute manner as well. He always recruits players that are going to offer a lot to the Kilmarnock side. Livingston side. Sorry, I'm getting too focused on his tennis here. Really good game here between Norrie and Johnson. I think Norrie's winning actually. But as to Livingston, they've been renowned for a defensive nous over the last few years. Also the potency up front. Jack Hamilton signing a new deal at Livingston's massive, and they've also recruited in the positions they've had. They have. What's the big question mark for me for Livingston next season will be is what they do with Newbley, Anderson and Hamilton. If Livingston go for 2 up front, understandable. If Livingston go for 1 up front, it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. It'll be interesting to see if a player goes out of war or not. I think Harrison Clark has gone back to Livingston as well. He'll be a new signing. He did well at Arbroath as well last year. So Livingston, as usual, have recruited in a good manner. David Martindale's been undermined, I think, for the job he's done at Livingston. He's always recruited left field, but he's always recruited from players that have been a state of the unknown. But he's always came up with the trumps and just missed out by skin of their teeth to a 92nd minute Motherwell equaliser from reaching the top 6 again, which would have been massive for a club of Livingston's calibre.
Do you think Livingston are a bit underrated in Scotland?
I think they are. Yeah. They've always took in players, or they've always had a gold period in which they've had a lot of momentum, and it's ultimately helped in terms of getting big results. And Martindale's a big part of that, where he's came in and helped towards bringing in good players and ultimately bringing in good results. Let's not forget here, Livingston reached the Premiership when Martindale was assistant to Davy, I forgot his last name, ex-Air manager. Martindale was in when Davy got appointed at Livingston, and that was a big positive as far as Livingston were concerned. He's kept that going. They've taken advantage of the youth system at the club, and they've also taken advantage of the many contacts they have elsewhere. What's affected Livingston, but I don't think we'll get the true proximity of this till maybe the end of July, is they haven't had as good a pre-season programme as other clubs. They've struggled to get to teams. They were going to play Kelty in a game, but Kelty are in the same Premier Sports Cup group as Livingston, so that got called off. They were trying to get Nottingham Forest, I read, but Nottingham Forest, because of the playoff triumphs, had to change their plans, so that was affected. So yeah, in terms of that, Livingston are affected in terms of pre-season preparations, but Livingston are still going with the same mindset. Marvin Bartley and David Martindale have worked wonders, and that continues to be the same this season. And there'll be a lot of people's wild card for this season ahead. There'll be a player in there that's nobody knows a lot about, but will go in and do well.
I actually think the signing of Isma Gonçalves is a good signing. He was at Hearts, and I thought he did okay. He did a really good job at St Mirren. I think potentially that's a really good signing for Livingston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know much about the guy in all honesty, but Livingston have been renowned for bringing in players that have been in a state of unknown and then come in and made Livingston their home, and then ultimately Livingston have become a selling club in terms of moving them on, or they've either went on to bigger clubs for free agents. So Livingston have always been really good in terms of recruitment, and that won't change moving forward. I think Premier Sports Cup gives us a bigger proximity in terms of, and a bigger barometer in terms of where Livingston will be, because they hardly played any games in Spain over the past week. They're home now. They're playing Morton tomorrow, I'm led to believe, or they're playing Morton during midweek, one of the two. And I think the Premier Sports Cup will give us a bigger barometer to where Livingston will be.
Do you think, I've just spoke about the fact that, do you think Livingston are underrated? Do you think it's difficult to kind of try and get players to come to Livingston?
To an extent. I don't think the pitch is a big part to play in it, not by any stretch of imagination. A lot of people look at Livingston and know they resisted hard work and temptation in the way they want to play football on a continuous basis. They are built on hard work, with obviously a few good strikers in there as well. Bruce Anderson has been a really good sign for Martindale. New boys came from a strong spell of one at Brough, as has Jack Hamilton. They've both been coming back from loan spells at Brough. New boy and Hamilton have been done very, very well. And I think Livingston's attractable in its own way, because people look at what Alan Forrest has done, John Guthrie, Stryek. They've all came at Livingston and been strong players for that club. And people look at that club and say, right, there's a possibility for me to get regular game time in a good environment at Livingston. King and Jacobs had been at that club for 14 years before going to Brough recently. And it just shows how Livingston is a good long-term, or gives you longevity, where that's long and truly gone now in modern day football.
Yeah, in terms of Livingston, looking at next season, again, what do you think their expectation will be for next season?
I think they'll be looking for top 6. Well, the primary target will be top 6. The secondary target will be avoiding relegation, because Livingston have got one of the lowest budgets in the league, and that maybe doesn't entice the quality player that they want. They'll always want players that will come in and obviously help in that regard, with regards to quality. But I think Martindale has been astute in his own specific area with regards to bringing in players that is going to help him and ultimately help Livingston. And yeah, Livingston have always been renowned for bringing in a good quality player, calibre player, and they were everybody's tipped to go down last September. And in October, November time, they had a really strong period in which they picked up some strong results to beat Dundee United at Tardis, which was a strong victory for Livingston in terms of how the season is shaped up to be. They beat Dundee United at Tony McIlroy Arena as well. And Livingston have always been strong at home. Yes, because of the pitch, but also because of the way they set up, especially at home. And I think that plays a huge part in terms of how Livingston play.
How many more signings do you think David Martindale might make in this summer?
You'll want a replacement for Alan Forrest, I think. Strikers wise is sorted. Probably an extra defender. I can see Livingston making 2 or 3 more signings.
Excellent stuff. Let's go to Motherwell now. And they've only made 2 signings so far. They've signed Blair Spittle from Ross County, a midfielder, and Paul McGinn from Hibs, a defender. Are you surprised that Alexander's not done more business yet?
To an extent, but I think he's bringing in quality. Blair Spittle's a player that's developed and done well in a really strong Ross County side. Ross County were incredibly disappointed to lose a player of his calibre last season. He's a really good player, Blair Spittle. He obviously came through the ranks. He was at Queen's Park when they were at amateur level, and now he's performing at a really strong level. What will help Spittle is he's come back to the Central Belt. He's been in the Highlands during a COVID pandemic, and that's not helped him massively. So he's back closer to family, closer to friends, and that'll help Blair Spittle massively moving forward. So that's big in terms of Blair Spittle. In terms of who was the other one? Sorry, Blair Spittle and
Paul McGinn.
Oh, McGinn. A lot of people were surprised that McGinn signed for Motherwell, but for Paul McGinn, it's a really strong signing. Motherwell have been renowned for being defensively diligent. Paul McGinn adds to that because McGinn offers experience and composure in the game, and that's an important thing. Motherwell need a striker. That's the ultimate final answer as far as I'm concerned. Motherwell didn't score enough goals after Tony walked apart from Dundee United. Van Veen carries his own threat. He carries his own expertise in the game. But ultimately, Motherwell ticked, especially in the opening half of the season, because of the way Van Veen and Watt linked up together. They were absolutely fantastic. And I actually think they were good mates, actually, because I interviewed Tony Watt after the Dundee United Motherwell. Van Veen was trying to phone Tony Watt after the game and everything, but where he wasn't and all that. So, yeah, Van Veen. Well, you'll get a strong Van Veen if you get a strong compatriot alongside him. It's a couple of weeks until Motherwell are involved in European action, so we'll just see how Motherwell get on between now and then. But for me, striker has to be the main priority for Steelman. Yeah,
there were Motherwell fans that weren't overly happy with Alexander last season, and we went through a spell where they couldn't win. Do you think it was harsh, the criticism that he received?
I don't think so, no. I mean, he got off to a really good, strong start to the season. And let's not forget here, Robinson, there was the fear of relegation. Motherwell staved that off by January. Yeah, results deteriorated before coming back to a amicable level again. But for Motherwell, they reached European football. And that, for Motherwell, the goal was survival because of how things transpired under Robinson. But for Motherwell, the goal was European football as well. They've achieved that. Let's not forget here, Motherwell don't have the biggest budgets. They're not a Hibs, Aberdeen or Hearts level when it comes to budgets. The love within that means Motherwell Football Club. They're really good when it comes to that. Al Burrows does a tremendous job behind the scenes of that football club. And they always balance the books every year. So they're always positive in that regard. And for me, if Motherwell can get midfielders and strikers in, alongside Spittle, I think Motherwell would be a far stronger force than they would be 12 months ago.
Again, would you imagine that Alexander maybe needs 4 or 5 signings? Would he need more than that?
Probably. I think 6 would be the ultimate target. Striker, well, I'd say you need 2 strikers in just to combat the way Motherwell will play, because any fear to injury and you're up against it. And this is where there'll be a lot more questions than answers in the striking department. Goalkeeper wise, sort of Graeme Kerry. Defensively, O'Donnell. You've got the guy from Finland. Probably need an extra defender. Midfield wise, probably short in there as well. So I'll go for 2 strikers. I'll go for 2 midfielders, and I'll go for 2 defenders.
I think with most teams, you can kind of see a kind of game plan and a way that they want to play. Did you see what Alexander was trying to do from Motherwell last season? Could you see like a philosophy?
Oh, 100%. It worked to an absolute T in the first half of the season, but that was primarily because of the way they played and the structure and the calibre of player that they had within the team. So it was always going to work in that regard. This season's the way it transpired after it didn't work out the way they wanted it to, and that was the most disappointing thing as far as we're concerned. But I think there's an identity. But I think Alexander got the criticism which was unjustified primarily because of how consistent Motherwell were in the opening stages of the season. There's going to be a lot of fear for Motherwell, though, because Motherwell reached European football because of an under-par Aberdeen and an under-par Hibs. Both those sides have strengthened, meaning Motherwell have to be more proactive as far as I'm concerned, or else Motherwell could be up in the scrap heap this season.
So if you're a Motherwell fan, what would your expectation be for this season? Because as you've just said, Hibs have strengthened, Aberdeen have strengthened. You've got to imagine that Hearts will be up there again, United will be up there again. So what's your expectations for Motherwell?
As I said earlier, I think the primary target is survival, and I think the secondary target is top 6 in European football.
I think that'll be a good season for Motherwell. Having European football, I think will be great, especially, nights at Fir Park will be brilliant. If we move on to Rangers now, at the moment, they've only signed John Souttar. I would imagine that Van Bronckhorst do a lot more business. I mean, I think John Souttar's a very good player. I've said this numerous times before. I think he will be a good signing for Rangers. But again, are you surprised that there's not really been a lot of business done for them so far when Celtic have strengthened?
Yeah, they've been like that for the past few years, in all honesty, Graham, where they've taken a lot of quality players, Rangers, and that deserves to be applauded. But they've taken players as well that they've not exactly rambled the changes as such. They've brought in marquee signings such as Aaron Ramsey. But Aaron Ramsey and Rangers proved to be a total capitulation, both counts. Ramsey missing that penalty against Frankfurt, it had everybody gone, oh no. And it was just a sign that where Rangers were at. For me, if Rangers can be more astute recruitment-wise, bringing a calibre player like Ramsey, but be more astute in terms of being a lot more vigilant financially, I think Rangers would be in a far stronger position 12 months down the line. It's all about finding the right calibre player, though. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst left a lot to be desired since being appointed Rangers manager. He's won the Scottish Cup and reached the Europa League final. But league-wise, he disappointed a lot of Rangers fans because Rangers just didn't find that consistency in league terms. So that was feeling disappointing if you were a Rangers fan. But there's a lot more to come, I think. And I think Rangers were growing rapidly in a short space of time in the end of the last season. They've been linked with Polak, is it, from Greece, which, if he comes out, it's a really good signing. I think they've made some good signings, but they haven't been new signings. There's Aidan Mcgee and Conor Goldson. McGregor offers stability in the goalkeeper front. Conor Goldson offers experience. For me, if Rangers don't recruit the players that they like to recruit, you're looking at your Scott Wrights, your James Taverniers and your Ryan Jacks and saying they're going to be massive players. Let's not forget as well, Alfredo Morelos has attracted interest from Sevilla. If Alfredo Morelos goes to Sevilla, that's a massive hole to fill in the striking department. So for me, Rangers are far from done, and Rangers need a lot of adjustments and fast.
That was my next question. Do you think strikers a priority? Because you've just mentioned Morelos, you've only really got Fashion Sakala. You've mentioned him there, Scott Wright, who he doesn't play a lot of games. So would you imagine that that'll be a massive priority?
100%. What I would say is Scott Wright's part is I think we've seen it in Frankfurt and in Hampden against Hearts how much he can play in this Rangers team, and how much of a pivotal figure he could be in this Rangers side. I thought it was fantastic in the Scottish Cup final against Hearts, getting into good areas and getting into good areas and scoring a goal that he did. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And him and Ryan Jack did very, very well in that cup final. And Ryan Jack, when he came back, he was like a new sign because he was out for a sustained period of time as well. So Rangers, they've still got a lot of pieces to fill in terms of the jigsaw. Do I think Rangers will repeat the heroics last season? Domestically, I think they will. European-wise, I don't think so. I think some clubs will be a lot more stronger this time around. And let's not vote the roost. Rangers were absolutely fantastic. Momentum was a huge springboard for them in terms of beating Dortmund, beating Leipzig, beating Braga. 3 fantastic victories there. And they'll be eager to keep that going. And for me, I've been using what happened in the last few games of the season as a massive, massive springboard. But also, Rangers have also shown how they can use their kids, because Rangers played Hearts in the last league game of the season against the Hearts team that were on paper experienced. And
Don't remind me.
Alex Lowry's and all the players were running the roll over Tynecastle. They got the freedom of Gorgie. So they've got strength in depth, Rangers.
Yeah, that hurt that game. Although the week after really hurt a lot more. But the only signing they have been obviously John Shooter. I mean, do you think John Shooter will improve Rangers massively?
I think he will, because it's another Scottish player, and Rangers have been criticised in the past for a lack of British or indeed Scottish players. And in terms of John Shooter, he offers so much to his Rangers side. He offered so much to Hearts last season. He was a big part in Hearts being as impressive as they were. And Hearts are a side where John Shooter's a player which, if he could form a good relationship with Connor Goldson, I think Rangers would be in a far stronger place defensively. I think John Shooter's the missing piece of the Rangers defence, because you've got Tavernier, you've got Suter, you've got Goldson, you've got Bassey. I actually forgot Carla Bassey until I just thought about it in my head just now. You forget how big an influence Carla Bassey had on the game, which attracted the interest in likes of Leicester and Aston Villa. So that was big from Carla Bassey's point of view. John Lundstrom and Ryan Jack will ultimately make up the Rangers midfield. Scott Wright, Hadji, when he comes back, he'll like you signing Hadji, and Ryan Kent will make up the Rangers three. So for me, in terms of starting 11, strikers the priority. In terms of strength and depth, there is good strength and depth there. For me, a player in each position would just tick the jigsaw as far as I'm concerned.
I'm glad you mentioned him there. How important do you think it was for Rangers to keep Calvin Bassey? Because I think he was absolutely outstanding last season.
Yeah, he's a player that went under the radar in the early part of the season, because not a lot of people knew about Calvin Bassey. He was a player that, because being honest, from my persuasion, he was a player that if you looked at Rangers, you were focusing on your Ryan Jacks, your Glenn. Well, I've not mentioned Glenn Kamara, for goodness sake. Well, that's another player that will be working hard to play in that midfield for Rangers. They're so strong in the midfield area that whenever they do make adjustments, they'll make strong adjustments that will have to battle very, very hard to get that Rangers squad, which just tells you how strong that Rangers squad is. As for Calvin Bassey, he's one of the more comfortable ones, because there's not really a full back as such that's waiting in the wings at that club. Alex Lowry to an extent, but Lowry plays more forward, or he has been playing more forward under Gio. So far, Bassey, he'll be comfortable. He'll gain more more consistency, more game time, which will aid his development massively each season. But ultimately, he's a player that gets forward and also does defensive work as well. So Calvin Bassey has been a massive, massive player, and he was big for Rangers to keep him on, because the recruitment side of things is very congested, not just in Scotland but across Europe. Which means that if you can't get players in, it's always hard to attract the right level player Rangers is an attractable proposition for players coming in, but ultimately the players need to be ready and valuable towards Rangers Football Club. And if Bassey left, it would have left a huge hole to fill, and it would have left the recruitment team working hours upon end finding for that replacement. So Bassey staying is a huge part for Rangers in terms of next season.
Now, we all know, Dave, that if you're a green side of Glasgow or a blue side of Glasgow, it's all about winning the league. You can't finish second. So how massive is next season going to be for Van Bronckhorst in terms of the league title?
I think it's massive because Gerrard was under intense pressure when things weren't going right, even on the Scottish Cup or League Cup front. And I think Giovanni's got a lot of praise and a lot of time on his hands after the Scottish Cup and Europa League exploits, which was absolutely massive for a club of Rangers' size. But in the same token as well, I think he needs to be more consistent on the league front. That was what hurt Rangers massively last season, going to your Tannadices, going to places that they were expected to go and win comfortably and either struggling to come away with a win. They went to an underperforming Dundee side under Mark McGee and just came away with a 2-1 victory. And for me, Rangers need to do far better on the European stage. Europa League ultimately played a huge part in that in terms of Rangers putting their eggs into that specific basket. But in the same token as well, Rangers fans think that the league is their bread and butter. And if you're not delivering on a week basis, Rangers fans will get annoyed. And would Rangers sacrifice not winning the league for a Europa League in the Scottish Cup? Absolutely. But they could beat the Europa League final. And that was a nasty piece of paracetamol for Rangers fans to go and swallow. It was fairly nasty. Scottish Cup was good for Rangers, but I think they'll be wanting to possess a far more. I think they'll be wanting to be more competitive in the league front. But I think it's a good thing for Scottish football that we've got a strong Celtic and a strong Rangers and a strong Hearts and Dundee United as well, and strong other teams, because it means that we're getting competitiveness across the board and not just based on the two Glasgow teams as well. So it's healthy. It's something that I very much appreciate.
100%. I can't wait for the season to start now. Let's move on to Ross County. Malky Mackay has made 7 signings, and I apologise in advance because the pronunciations of these names are going to be totally wrong. But they brought in Victor Loture from Calvary FC, who's a centre midfielder. They've signed Jan Danda, who's a midfielder from Swansea. They've signed George Haran from Oxford City, who's a left back. They've signed Owura Edwards from Bristol City on loan, who's a winger. They've signed Kazim Olagby from Southampton on loan, who's a winger. They've signed Jordi Hewula from Doncaster, a centre forward. And they've also signed Ben Purrington from Charlton, a left back. Dave, he's been a busy boy, has Malky Mackay.
Yeah, he's very astute in the transfer market, Malky Mackay. He's always been given to him as a bringing in quality players. Showed that last season. Brought in Joseph Hungbo, tremendous signing. Harry Clark was fairly impressive. He brought in the goalkeeper, Ashley Maynard Brewer, who's eventually signed for Gillingham in League Two. And he was a top goalkeeper for Malky Mackay. So he's always been efficient and effective in the transfer market, Malky Mackay. And this has continued to be exactly the same this time around. 7 new signings, and I think being proactive was key for Malky Mackay this time around, because he's got 7 good acquisitions in before the Premier Sports Cup starts. Ross County have been in Verona this week, and they'll be interested to see how this comes to fruition by the time they play Bucky Thistle in the Premier Sports Cup a week tomorrow. That's going to be a big game for Ross County in terms of seeing where they're at, seeing how they can evolve, and seeing how they can develop. And pre-season will be about bedding these players in, gelling these players in, and seeing where they're at, seeing how they can develop in a short space of time, and also making sure that Ross County can be more competitive in the open exchanges of the season, because Ross County, they did fairly well reaching the top 6, but you could argue that they might have reached European football had they not had a slow start to the season. So Ross County getting players in early doors has been massive for the Staggies, and I'm confident they'll have a much stronger start to the season next year.
Someone who obviously won't be there is somebody that was top scorer last season, and that's Regan Charles-Cook, who moved to the Belgian First Division for Eupen. Are you surprised that he's gone to Belgium? Did you expect him to stay in Scotland, maybe Aberdeen or Hearts or somebody?
I think if Regan Charles-Cook was going anywhere, it was either Scotland or England. Belgium did come as a huge surprise, indeed, yes. And Regan Charles-Cook is a player that's going to offer a lot of impetus, a lot of creativity among the game. Belgian football's sometimes not been the best move in terms of Shankland. Shankland has came in and scored goals in the Belgian league, but always Shankland tasted relegation, so that wasn't ideal, and people did question whether it was the right move for Charles Cook. It's going to be an interesting concept to see where that goes for him, because he's a player that likes to get forward, but he's a player that will change games for clubs as well. And it's interesting to see. I think Charles Cook will develop under the right manager. I don't have a lot of knowledge about Belgian football, in all honesty, but Malky Mackay is a forward-thinking manager. He's a manager that likes to play attacking football. He's a manager that will get a balance right across the park. And Regan Charles Cook played a massive, massive part in that. Dingwall eventually became a fortress because of the way Charles Cook played, but because of the way Ross County played as well. Ross County were renowned for getting a lot of late winners, which only helped Ross County achieve top 6 football, because Ross County were a lot of people's predictions to go down last May. But boy, has Malky Mackay proved a lot of people wrong.
I think in terms of what they've done so far, Ross County, they have signed 2 wingers, Kazim Olagbe and Owura Edwards. So that to me suggests that, there's a way that he wants to play. He likes to get width in the team. And I think you'll see a lot of that from them next season as well, getting the ball wide and getting balls in the box.
Yeah, I think Ross County still have a bit more recruitment to be done, but they've signed creativity. Creativity is something that every team strives for. They've signed last summer they took in Jack Baldwin, who was ex-Sunderland, and he's been fairly good. Physical presence at the back, always offering something defensively for Ross County. Ross County have always been really, really good defensively, and they maybe haven't had as much local talent or Scottish talent as they have in previous years, but Ross County are fairly strong across certain areas of the park. And Ross Calkin, you've got to remember, he'll be a strong player for Ross County as well. So, Ross County have got to a fairly strong start in that regard. I'll be interested to see how they set up a week tomorrow. I'll be busy next week doing some research because they've signed 7 players, so I'm looking forward to doing my homework in greater detail next week prior to covering them against Buckeye a week tomorrow. But in terms of Ross County, fairly good start from Malky Mackay. They have been fairly proactive. So far, so good.
Someone I'm interested to see play is Jan Danda. Now, he played 50 games for Swansea. This is something of a coup, I think, for Ross County to get a guy like that.
Yeah. What position does he play, sorry?
He's an attacking midfielder.
Okay, well, there you go. There's a player. He'd probably be a good number 10 for Swansea. For Ross County, sorry. He'd probably be a good number 10 for Ross County. He probably is a Regan Charles Cook like for like, because Regan Charles Cook was renowned for being a good attacking midfielder / number 10, where he was getting into good areas, getting into channels, getting into 6-yard areas, finishing goals. He'll probably be looking for the same effectiveness from Jan Danda this time around. And Jan Danda has had a pretty impressive CV, played 50 times for Swansea, playing in some big games and scoring some crucial goals for his clubs as well. So in terms of Ross County, that's another bit of astute business they've picked up there. And Malky Mackay alongside Dale Prime McDonald, who works in the marketing department at the club, they've been known for bringing in like Highland tour guide things for the players, and I think that's been big because had they not done that, I don't think Ross County would have brought in the players to have. So Jan Dander's another very, very good piece of business for the Staggies.
Yeah, he scored 5 goals for Swansea. He's only 23, so again, age is on his side. He's a very good player.
He's at a very good age. He's at a very good age. Regan Charles Cook was at a specific age as well, where he was coming into Ross County having been at Julian and needed a bit of impetus and imagination in his career. And not only that, Sir Charles Cook has moved to Belgium. It could be the same here for Danda.
You mentioned that you think he'll do a bit more business. Do you think maybe up front, maybe a bit more up front?
I think he needs a number 9, just a player to go in and score goals. He's got Jordan White, who offers a physical presence, but I do think Ross County need another striker. Centre half wouldn't go amiss as well, and maybe a backup goalkeeper as well.
You rightly said that a lot of folk tip Ross County to go down next season. Again, I'm going to ask, what's your expectation for them next season?
I think they'll want the same. I think there's no expectations on Ross County, but Roy McGregor has his own expectations. Ross County are a club that normally like to finish 7th or 8th in the table. I think that'd be a good barometer for Ross County, but I think they'd want to finish in the top 6 again.
So let's go on to St Johnstone. They've signed 3 players so far. They brought in Andrew Constantine from Aberdeen, a centre-back, Dre Wright from Hibs, a winger, and Aidan Mcgee from Celtic, who's a left-back on loan. Now, obviously, we all know St Johnstone had a difficult season last season. They've only brought in 3 players so far. I'd expect them to strengthen a bit more. What do you make of the signings they've made so far?
Andy Constantine's a good sign to start off with, because St Johnstone were exposed massively at the back last season. So Constantine's a really good signing. He'll link up well with Liam Gordon. Liam Gordon's a Johnstone boy through and through, and Constantine offers that experience. So that's massive. It's a big loss for St Johnstone losing Jamie McCart to was it Morecambe? He'll be a massive loss, but I think Andy Constantine just brings that bit of stability to St Johnstone, so that's good for the Saints. That Dre Wright had a really good spell at the Saints last season, but he's a really good hard working midfielder who isn't exactly an attack-minded player, but he'll offer a lot in terms of stability and solidarity for St Johnstone's side. So yeah, I think Dre Wright's a really good acquisition. Adam Montgomery, he didn't get as much chances at Aberdeen last season as he'd have desired, but I think the way St Johnstone plays suits Montgomery in terms of the ability to get up the park, the ability to do defensive work, and Montgomery will ultimately be in the periphery of the Silk side, or he has been in this precise moment in time, but Montgomery will offer a lot to St Johnstone next season, just because St Johnstone lacked players in that specific position. And another player that's been brought in today is Graeme Kerry from CSKA Sofia, who's another left-sided player. So St Johnstone have been putting square pegs in square holes, and that's pretty good going for St Johnstone. So they've definitely been doing a lot of business at Johnstone, and they've definitely been a lot more proactive than they have been this time last year. Goalkeeper's the priority for me in terms of St Johnstone moving forward. Knows under Clark. They have Elliot Parish, who's signed a new deal, so he'll currently be St Johnstone's number 1. But I think if you were to ask any St Johnstone fan, they'll want somebody of a higher bill than Elliot Parish at this precise moment in time.
I think it was massive for St Johnstone to stay up. You know, they're not a massive club, but I think it was huge that they stayed up. And I think, you know, looking at the things they made so far, I think they probably will need at least another 4 or 5. But again, is it going to be a case of trying to stay up? Surely St Johnstone's aim should be higher than that, given what they did the year before when they won both the cups. Yeah,
as I say, I think they'll need an extra goalkeeper. They did have a Scotland under-21s goalkeeper. I've forgotten his name. He's basically a guy that's hardly walked at the St Johnstone first team, but he's been doing well for the Scotland under-21s. So I hope he gets a chance at the McDermott Park next year. He could be the next Sander Clark, who knows. Probably for St Johnstone, they've got Callum Booth, so he offers a lot of in the left back area. They probably need a right back, probably. They probably need a couple of midfielders, just because O'Halloran is playing more deeper. And St Johnstone's problem for the last few seasons, they need a striker. They need a Sean Rooney replacement. They need probably a couple of midfielders, because St Johnstone have been renowned for picking up various injuries in the midfield area for some bizarre reason over the last few seasons. And they need a striker, because Stevie May ultimately will not go and score 15 goals this season. And O'Halloran's been playing much deeper in the last few years under Davidson. So strikers, I think, will have to be the priority for St Johnstone alongside a goalkeeper. But if St Johnstone don't go for a goalkeeper, I'd like to see the young guys involved. It's Ross. I'll try and get his name for you, actually. Sorry, I'll try and get his name for you. But I think St Johnstone getting play a striker is a greater priority than getting a goalkeeper at this specific stage in time, just because of how St Johnstone were left behind massively in terms of needing to survive in the final day against Inverness last season. I'll try to get this goalkeeper's name for you. Ross, let's have a look. Ross Sinclair, that's it. Ross Sinclair. He was involved in the Scotland under 21s last year, and I think this could be a good breakthrough season for Ross Sinclair. Without St Johnstone really needing to go into the market as such, because Ross Sinclair's been there and done it. He's been at loan at a few clubs and done well. And also, St Johnstone have got Max. Where is he again? Max, Ukrainian guy, where he offers so much to that midfield. So I think St Johnstone, they need 5 youth players. Yeah.
In terms of the striker position, is Callum Hendry still there?
No, he's signed for Fleetwood.
Did he?
Strikers wise, they've got Chris Kane, Michael Howland, who I alluded to plays much deeper, Stevie May and Theo Bear, and Ito Vantonen's been loaned out to Winfield for the season. So St Johnstone probably need 2 or 3 strikers, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Hendry was very good for St Johnstone towards the end of the season. They kind of kept them up, to be honest. But I think you're right. I think they do need a lot more signings, and I think it'll be a big season for St Johnstone next season. So going on to the very last team on our list, we've done well to get through nearly an hour of this. So St Mirren, they have brought in 6 players. They've signed Mark O'Hara from Motherwell from midfield. They've signed Trevor Carson, a goalkeeper from United. Jonah Ayunga from Morecambe, who's a winger. Toyosi Ulunsaya for a centre forward. Ryan Strain from Maccabi Haifa, who's a right back, can play winger as well. And Declan Gallagher from Aberdeen, who's a centre back. I just want to touch on that actually. Are you surprised that Declan Gallagher left Aberdeen?
Not surprised he left Aberdeen because he got a fair bit of justifiable criticism from the Red Army, and things didn't exactly materialise in the way Declan Gallagher wanted it to, especially after Stephen Glass left. And I'm not surprised in that regard because I don't think Jim Goodwin was really keen to keep a hold of him anyway. But as for St Mirren, I'm surprised he's joined that type of club. Maybe Stephen Robinson had a massive part to play in that, understandably so, because Robinson and Gallagher had a really strong relationship from the time at Motherwell, which ultimately helped. As for St Mirren, they've recruited really well. They've started off very, very well. They've recruited in the right areas, and Robinson's used his experience and know-how to efficiently. He signed players from Morecambe, signed ex-Motherwell players, and signed good players in good positions. So, for the buddies, they're off to a really, really strong start. Pardon me.
What would you make of Trevor Carson? I think he's a good goalkeeper. I think he could be a decent signing for St Mirren.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't stick it out, didn't you? In all honesty, Trevor Carson, because obviously he'd have knew more than anybody on the situation regarding Benji Segrist, but Carson's a really, really good sign for the buddies. I mean, he's a player that's been playing under Robinson beforehand, and he's a player that likely hold the number 1 jersey in the next season because Al looks away and Vladke is obviously at Ipswich at this precise moment in time, so he'll probably be the number 1 goalkeeper next year. And what that offers Carson is a sustainable amount of games as well. And let's not forget, Carson played a lot of games under Robinson at Morecambe prior to Robinson go up to Paisley, so I think it'll just be a case of here you go, just a different club. And I think Carson will enjoy his stay in Paisley because of how St Mirren and Robinson like to play their football.
I think Mark O'Hara could be a good signing. I rated him when I was at Motherwell. I think that could be, he could add a bit more steel in that midfield for him, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been something they've been craving for a while. St Mirren have been renowned under Goodwin for their work rate, and O'Hara will be exactly the same. I do think if St Mirren need to add, I think it's in the striking department, because St Mirren, for my liking, didn't score enough goals, and they just scraped past some teams. They needed a 93rd-minute winner to beat Dundee, and it was funny enough because after they beat Dundee, they didn't score a lot of goals for a while after that. And yeah, you could tell that was like Sir Jamie McGrath and Conor Ronan and Greg Kilty not firing them in, and even Brophy not firing them in. You could tell it had an effect on the way St Mirren played. So for me, a goal scorer is the priority for St Mirren.
you think there's any chance that Mirren could pushing at the top 6?
I don't think so. I think Robinson will demand hard work. He's a workaholic, Stephen Robinson. But I don't think St Mirren will have enough for top 6. If they sign players and there's movement in the transfer market, maybe a different story. But I've got a gut feeling St Mirren won't do well this year. Gallagher's went backwards in terms of how he's progressed as a player. Class is a really good goalkeeper, but there's a lot of similarities to how Robinson was like at Monroe and how things have progressed between players moving from clubs to Paisley. So for me, I think St Mirren will be bottom 6 this year.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, why do you think it? What do you think the issue is with Declan Gallagher? Because he's obviously been touted a lot for like Scotland call-ups, but he's just, I don't know what it is with him. What do you think the issue is with him?
I think it's a man management thing more than anything else, in all honesty, because in terms of man management, Robinson's really good in that part. Stephen Glass was a little bit inexperienced in the comparison. Robinson was really good in terms of keeping the players level-headed, keeping the players on the ground. Glass would either put players under the bus or would get carried away after specific victories. And for me, that wasn't right for players such as Declan Gallagher. And for Declan Gallagher to work in a specific team, you need good managers. And Robinson's a good manager in his own right, and we'll get the best out of Declan Gallagher heading into the new campaign.
Well, that's the end of our transfer show. But just before we go, we've got another few minutes left. I'm just going to ask Dave, because he's not here next week. I think we are planning to do a show next week just for the build-up to the Premier Sports Cup. So, Dave, are you looking forward to the start of the Premier Sports Cup next weekend?
Yeah, it's gonna be intriguing. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of exciting ties. There's gonna be a lot of exciting battles. There's gonna be a lot of exciting games. And obviously, we've got the likes of the highway sides playing Premiership sides. It's gonna be exciting propositions for Bucky Thistle playing Ross County a week tomorrow. Fraser play Kilmarnock a week tomorrow. Hopefully they get good crowds along to those games. And obviously Bonnyrigg Rose playing Hibs live on television, which will be exciting as well. Obviously it's a big occasion for Peterhead as well, having a North East derby against Aberdeen a week on Sunday as well. So there's going to be a lot of exciting games. The Premiership sides will be expected to go and do well, be professional and get the job done. But for me, I think they both showed last season how the Premier Sports Cup was good for them in terms of producing the season they had. They only get beat by Dundee United. And St Mirren offers a winnable assignment for them when they play the Buddies a week tomorrow in Paisley. So, yeah, it's going to be an intriguing one for all different kinds of sides. Bonnyrigg Rose as well. They've got the opportunity to go and get a few scalps. They've got Morton and Falkirk. Falkirk and Morton have strengthened, but it's also an opportunity for Bonnyrigg to get a few big results in there as well. So yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity. Kind of beef, it's an opportunity for them to gain a few statements as well prior to the Women's League. Obviously, there's been a lot of casualties in the Women's League with the way things have been handled behind the scenes in an utterly treacherous way. So it's given an opportunity for Mo Ross to get a few big results. Brecon got a few big results in the Premier Sports Cup, and it maybe didn't transpire in the way they wanted it to in the Highland League, but Brecon did get a few big results, beating Alloa, and they gave, I can't remember who they were playing, but I think they played, I can't remember who they actually played now, but they gave whoever they played a really good game. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, it's going to be intriguing as well. So here's hoping for some exciting ties and ultimately goals, and even a penalty shootout along the way as well.
Absolutely. I'll be at Tynecastle next week because Bonnyrigg Rose are actually playing a friendly against Hearts next week. So I've got my ticket for that. So I'm looking forward to going to see that. I'm looking forward to seeing what Bonnyrigg are going to be like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see. And they'll be keen to make an impression prior to the League 2 starting.
Absolutely. It's going to be I'm really looking forward to the new season starting. Only a few weeks to go and we will start the Premiership season. Obviously, I hope that Hearts do well, potentially for a third again, but I'm looking forward to the new season starting. I think next week Michael McCune will be hosting, but I will be here. Dave won't be. Reagan might be here, I don't know. I think Steve B is coming on after us, so it just remains for me to say thank you very much to David Smith for joining me. And thank you very much for everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you again next week. See you later.